Hey, come on in. So you want to learn about Skill 100 planers? I got 4 of them. I've had them for quite a while. Here's how they look when they're brand new. This is a brand new Skill 100. Brand new meaning not used, but really, really old. It's like a perfect Model A. So the way these things come originally, you hear the front of it. That's the depth adjustment. These things were designed to do doors. You set the depth and you cut it. What you do is you take a screwdriver, stick it in there and pound it, then they get nice and floppy so you can control your bands when you're cutting the rails. Here's the type of spout they actually come with, which clogs up pretty easy. So if you notice, I put vacuums on all of them. I did it in a very crude way, but it works. So you have a swivel up here. Now over time, instead of running the really, really long cords, I cut this is the one I use now. So the cord goes straight up in the hose, so it's off the ground, not tying up onto the racks. So if you look at this planer, here's what's happened over time. Over time, there's been an evolution of this planer. One of the things, the tricks we do, is round off the front. You take this and take these corners off of it, make them more round. If you look at some of these, they've gotten rounder. This one didn't get cut, this one got cut, this one got really cut. So having them shorter like that and rounder, they don't gouge, it just works a little better. Now if you notice, let's look at the foot of it. This is the back of the planer. If you look down the line here, this one was cut off right here, which is that amount was cut off. This one, they cut off way too much on this one. I bought this one this way. This is mine, the one I use all the time, the one that's permanently used. This one's cut off, I think, the right length. So if you're going to cut your planer, make sure you think about where you're cutting it. Where this one is cut is right about there, right on the other side of this piece here. So with these planers, one of the other things is I've never burned up a planer. I've shaped 40,000 boards. This is my original planer right here. This is a 5.5 amp. It's a very low power compared to the 7.5. So the reason I've never burned up a planer is because I have a vacuum on them. The other thing is I put a locking trigger on them. That's locked. See that trigger? I put that on there. It's off of a sander. And I modified it so these have locking triggers. The reason you want the locking triggers is because you want a lot of airflow. How you burn up an armature is there's a couple different ways. One, let it clog up. Air hose it out. The other thing is you got brushes on these things. Clean your brushes and repair your brushes. Pull them out. The brushes, we got different brushes for all different types. Here's a close-up of the brush. And this rubs against the armature. Once they get down to the metal, they start arcing, they burn up the armature. Now these armatures, you can't buy these armatures because they're made so long ago, they hand wind them. They're never as good. So back to the survival of the motor is keeping it clean, keeping airflow, and people, I hear them click, 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 click. The whole time they're shaping, they're doing this. That's like driving your car on-off switch the whole time. You're going to mess your motor up doing that. It's not a good idea. The other thing is, when you have your planer on high speed, then the airflow is really cool and keeping it aerated and cool and blow it out. So let's talk about blades for a minute. This one has, let me show you this one here. This is the one I'm using right now. Okay, that has this style blade, which is these little skinny ones, and they slide in, and I'll show you how to do that because a lot of people don't know how to put blades in and they don't know how to adjust them. Here's the old school blades. This is the original old school blades that are in this planer, and they're big giant blades. They work fine, but they're not as easily replaced and sharpened and all that. You got to deal with it. These you just throw away and get new ones. This one, I had my own custom Ginsu blades, all scalloped. I call them Ginsu, but it's kind of a joke. But this is really good on different types of foam. Here's a barrel. that this barrel was for epoxy boards originally back 20 some years ago when we first started doing epoxy boards and, you know, the bead foam. This doesn't take the volume off that I like, so the new planers with the right vacuum hose and everything seems to work fine. So if you look at how I put these vacuum hoses on here, it's pretty crude. All I did was take a 2¼ inch typical shop vac hose, cut the sides of it, filled it up with hot glue. So you glue them on like this, and I usually tack them a little bit. And the main thing is that you have a swivel on this part of the hose so that when you walk around in a circle, they don't get tied up. And the reason that instead of having the hose on the ground, the hose up here and the cord on the ground, it kind of drives you nuts. So I put them together. I usually have a cord on here with a lot of flex in it so you can walk to the end of the boards. And setting up the pulley system is critical to make the no resistance when you walk to the end of the board. So after shaping 40,000 surfboards, you try to come up with the best tools, the best techniques, so that you're not frustrated when you're shaping and doesn't cause any mistakes on a really nice blanks. This is one of the things that go wrong with planers is the bearings wear out. Because these were made in the 60s, the bearings do go out over time. I've got a whole pack of them. I made a custom tool, which is a wheel puller. The way I altered it was I grinded these really pointed. So this sits in here, this clamps, and you turn this, and this clamps onto here, and it pulls this like this, bites it, and pulls it off. This works really well. Sometimes it's frustrating. You start pounding on things, not a good idea. Obviously, this is a wheel puller, not designed for this bearing, but it was altered for it. So pretty stoked on that. Not a bad way to go. Now what I'm going to show you is how to take the blades out and set the blade depth. Okay, one of the things here when you're trying to put new blades in and you're trying to set them, these little bolts here, you have to understand the mechanics of this. And what you do is you loosen these like this, and once they're loose, you release the pressure of the blade. The blade can slide out, but it has to slide out. You have to spin this and slide it out this way. See, there's the little tiny blade. And it has two sides to it. So you flip it when you want to use the other side. That's what I'm doing right now. So I drop this thing in, this little skinny blade, and it's on a little track. You got to center it. And then this, and these set screws here, control the height. These have to be loose. These three have to be loose to move this up and down. They give you a tool to adjust the height of the blade, but the downside of this tool, I think, is it hits both sides. And you want to hear that kind of clicking little noise as you turn it, or you can eyeball it and look at the space in there, and you can see there's a big space in there. So what I would do is turn this out of the way, turn this to the right, which raises it. Now look at that space. Now it hits. See, now it's too tight. So there's a fine adjusting to get this where it's level. You want this blade and this blade even this way with the foot. Once they're even, then the thing cuts absolutely perfect. You want a zero cut. That's a zero cut. This is a full cut. So when you go down the material with your feed rate coming in and this thing's spinning like this, you want it to come in and just mow and suck the foam right in there and go up into the container. But this tool here, if you don't have this tool, here's how you do it. Because sometimes I don't have these things with me if I'm in a foreign country shaping or something. But here's what you do. I just use it this way. You can use any kind of piece of metal just so you see the depth. Now that's too high. You can see it's hitting. You want it dead even here, then you got the perfect adjustment. Then you take this wrench and you cinch these down and get these things really tight. Not crazy, snug like that, done. They're not going to fly out because it's wedged. So you just got to make sure you tighten them. That's it. It sounds easy. It's hard to do. If it's done right, you'll love your planer. If you do it wrong, you'll hate your planer. So take the time, fresh blades, fresh cuts. I've got some balsa boards I got to do back here, And I'm putting fresh blades in for balsa because this is a wood planer. It works for foam, but they have to be really sharp for wood. So that's why I'm doing this. So the bottom line here, what I would equate this to is really changing this simple door planer, very clean, into a race hot rod. And this is kind of like back in the day when they modified cars to win races. You made it better and better and better with personal modifications. Most people don't know about this, that the planers have been so radically altered over the years. And I guarantee if you're a surfboard shaper, you might have learned one thing from this video. Hope it works for you.